Hey, what's up guys, it's Matt with the Movement System. If you're a runner and you've been given this common glute activation exercise, then you might want to watch this video because we're going to talk about a completely different approach because quite often this frankly doesn't work. A lot of runners are told to just activate their glutes no matter what the lower extremity issue that they're facing is, but often that's not the right approach and we need more of a biomechanics based strategy. That's what we're going to cover today, is how we actually change the way that the leg interacts with the ground and the foot interacts with the ground so that we can improve our gait cycle, and it's not by just activating our glutes. Let's go ahead and dive into it. All right, so we're going to talk about how the leg interacts with the ground during gait and how that relates to a lot of common hip, knee, and ankle problems that runners face. Now, before we do, let's talk about this exercise, the mini band side step. What you'll notice is that this exercise is what we call open kinetic chain. This means that the foot is not in contact with the ground as the muscle is being activated. So especially as we're stepping out, our foot is activating the glute with the foot in the air. This is the same exact thing that happens when you do a side lying leg raise or a clamshell exercise. We're isolating the glute activation without changing how the foot is interacting with the ground. This is really important because it's the reason that this isolated glute activation doesn't often translate to improved gait mechanics. Okay, so now let's talk about gait mechanics and how your hip and your knee and your foot and ankle work during the running cycle. So during the running cycle, what's going to happen is that we're going to be transferring force through the foot. Specifically, we typically start on the outside edge of the heel and then we transfer force through the midfoot and through the big toe. When this gait cycle works well, we toe off smoothly, we distribute force throughout our foot well, we absorb force and then create force, and things go well. But quite often for runners, some part of this gait cycle is thrown off and more stress is taken up at one area than the other. Some common injuries for runners include the lateral hip, the knee on the inside, the outside, or even the front of the knee, as well as in the foot and ankle, or even in the metatarsals or in the big toe. A lot of these issues have something to do with glute activation, but just doing glute activation doesn't help. Instead, we need to integrate our glute activation with proper mechanics at the foot, and the only way to do that is with a closed chain exercise. That means choosing an exercise that leaves the foot on the ground, just like when we're producing force running, but also activates the glute. The way that we can do that is with what we call lower extremity torsion, which is driven largely by hip external rotation with the foot still on the ground. Let's go ahead and show you how that looks. Okay, so before I show you exactly how to do this exercise, two things. You're gonna need a very thick, heavy mini band. I recommend the Perform Better mini band. The black one is the thickest and the heaviest one, and that's gonna give you enough tension to really make this exercise challenging in your hip. Second thing is I have to give credit to the Runner's Zone. That is a group of over 200 of the top running clinicians in the world, led by a world-class physical therapist, Chris Johnson, up in Seattle. He taught me a lot of these exercises and the mechanics of the lower extremity, and I'm now just sharing that with you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get into it and talk about what torsion is. Torsion is our ability to yield appropriately during mid-stance and then toe off appropriately later in the gait cycle. Oftentimes, runners with a variety of lower extremity issues have some problem with this torsion process. One way to test this is with the table test. Since I've learned this table test about 2 years ago, I've seen a lot of runners who have failed this test and have had an inability to torsion the lower extremity. Doing this exercise helps you restore that table test range of motion and also build strength and motor control in those positions, so that way it specifically improves the way your hip and your foot move during the gait cycle. So how we do this exercise is first, we're gonna stand with most of our weight on one leg. The most basic variation of this exercise is just standing here and then torsioning the lower extremity out and back in. So driving the knee out and back in. This is led by the hip external rotation or by the glute muscles. We should be feeling the glute activate in a very similar way to what we would do during a lateral toe tap, but importantly, we're now integrating that glute activation with the mechanics that are going along at the midfoot. That's what's gonna help us actually learn to produce and absorb force in a specific way that's gonna translate to the gait cycle. So it's really important that we keep our big toe on the ground, we keep our foot flat on the ground, and we move through the foot as we're doing this exercise. You can do this with shoes, but you can also pop the shoe off. So from the front, what I want to coach my athletes to do who are working on this is to keep the base of the big toe anchored down into the ground and then to rotate that knee out to the side. We want to feel that glute activate for 1 or 2 seconds and then bring it right back into midline. Bring it out and then right back into midline. And if you're doing this exercise well, you should see movement at the midfoot. Coming back to our skeleton model, base of the big toe is going to stay on the ground, and as we rotate out, you're going to see all these midfoot joints start to gain motion. This is really important because the midfoot is key for absorbing force during the gait cycle. If we're not absorbing force at the midfoot, we're going to absorb excessive force at the knee, at the lateral knee, at the medial knee, or even at the hip. If we can yield and absorb force and come in and out of that midfoot during the gait cycle, that's going to help us distribute force a lot better, and we're going to be able to take stress off of a lot of different areas of the lower extremity. I can't emphasize enough that this is why glute activation alone isn't going to help. Because if we leave the foot in the air and we're activating this glute, as soon as you put the foot back down, that stiff midfoot is still not going to absorb force, and you're not going to see any change in where you're absorbing force. All right, so going back to the exercise, if you master this first level, which is just getting that lower extremity to torsion, getting that midfoot to move, the next level is building stability and control there. And the way we do that is by finding that external rotation position where the base of the big toe is on the ground, that glute is active and we can feel it with 1 or 2 fingers on the back of the hip, and then we can start to move the opposite leg. All of our weight's gonna go into our stance leg, just like during running with a little bit of knee bend. Again, similar position to running. We can even add axial load here by holding a dumbbell or something, but this is good enough. What we want to see is being able to hold this position and then also move the other leg. So we can reach out to the side, we can reach out laterally, we can reach out forward. But our goal here is to be able to be really strong and stable in this position. If we can build the ability to maintain this position with our external rotators, then we're gonna be able to, again, absorb force during the gait cycle better. If we don't do this exercise well, or we don't integrate it all the way down to the foot mechanics, then what's gonna happen is you're gonna continually, during the gait cycle, collapse in or yield in the wrong places, or distribute force at a focal point rather than globally through the entire functional process of torsion. Our overall goal is, instead of focal loading in one area where you're experiencing pain, is to learn to torsion and move efficiently and have the strength to move in and out of positions so that we can spread out load, you can run farther, pain-free. All right, and then to wrap this all up and really make this long-lasting relief and change, we want to integrate this with strength. The way you can do that is with an exercise like a barbell march, for example, or even a small step up with the additional load of the barbell. I actually recommend my athletes get all the way to at least 50 to 100% of body weight on the bar while being able to maintain a single leg stance position and while being able to march onto a 4 to 8 inch step. These heavy marches involve a lot of axial load, and that is going to be even more functional for how we distribute force through that hip and then down through the lower extremity. So this is a way to really reinforce those good mechanics of torsion and build strength and stability on that leg, so that way we can efficiently move through the gait cycle. So if you're a runner and you've been doing clamshells and side steps forever and haven't really changed and improved your gait cycle that much, consider doing this lower extremity torsion drill and then working all the way up to doing weighted marches and functional exercises like this to truly create lasting change in the strength and stability of your hip all the way down to your foot. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. And if you want to check out any of our training programs, I'll have those linked in the description as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.